Hey everyone, how's it going? Even though most of us choose the 10 to 51 cassette for Shimano 12 speed, remember that they also have this 10 to 45 tooth cassette. Actually, if you look at their sponsor Shimano riders on the UCI circuit, you'll see that most of them use this 10 to 45 tooth cassette. I have an SLX in front of me today. Why don't we check it out? This 1045 only exists as an SLX. You see the one aluminum cog over here, as an XT with two aluminum cogs, and obviously the XTR would have three aluminum cogs. There is no cheaper version than this. The Derailleur M7100 only comes as a 10 to 51 tooth, so wide range cassette. So the more expensive cassettes come in what's called the wide range and the rhythm step, 1051 or 1045. They're for trail, cross country, and enduro. They all provide the Hyperglide Plus. They're 12 speed with an aluminum carrier, and they all require the newly introduced Freehub body, the micro spline. Shimano believes that this 1045 cassette gives you the perfect gear steps between the 12 cogs, just like the 11240 or 1142 cassettes provided you with the perfect gear steps here on 11 speed. That also means that the 10 to 51 tooth cassettes that we seem to prefer for Shimano 12 speed are a compromise. Are these all that different? The size of it? This is a 160 millimeter disc, and that 1045, it's almost as big as it. The 10 to 51 is larger than a 180 by that much. So if I put a 160, or if you plan to have 160 in the rear, you can see how the cassette, it's gonna dwarf that disc. The big dinner plate, yep, that's the 1051. The construction of these cassettes is very similar. The beam spider, which is this aluminum carrier, is used on both. They are similar but not identical. The 1045 seems to be using a larger spider. On the last cog, you can see the branding, CS-M7100 12 speed. This is made in Japan, just like all the other 12 speed components from Shimano. SLX is on this other side, and aside from that, the only thing you're gonna see is the 40 Newton meters needed to tighten up this lock ring. You have 5 loose cogs here at the end of your cassette. Everything else is bolted down onto this carrier. The 1051 is built slightly different. The way these bigger cogs are bolted onto each other is different. The same branding here in the back, and the same 5 loose cogs followed by the 7 cog cluster. So the 5 loose cogs are the same. The 2 different sizes washers or spacers here are the same. In reality, all the cogs are the same up until the last 4 here, because that is where the 51 goes 33, 39, 45, and 51, as opposed to 32, 36, 40, and 45. And if you were to look at the bicycle gear calculator, you're gonna see how everything is the same up until here, where the 1045 keeps this close gear steps, and the 1051 starts to get bigger steps. Now, most of us prefer the 10 to 51 because of the range, and I would argue that these bigger gear steps here are not that big of a deal for weekend warriors like you and me. I'm not a big fan of the way these new cassettes get installed on the microspline, but I do have this in detail on a different video. Make sure you check that out for an installation step by step. Is the weight difference a reason to go for 1045? This one is 522 grams. The wide range cassette comes up to 534. So we're talking 12 grams difference between the two. These are with the plastic tube installed. 1045 by itself is 516 grams, which is about 60 grams heavier than a SRAM Eagle GX. As you guys probably know, for Hyperglide Plus, you're gonna need the Shimano cassette and chain. This 1045 is no different. And by the way, I read an article online where they tested different chains, and the Shimano XTR and XT were some of the best when it came to longevity plus low friction. However, the Eagle X01 and XX1 excelled when it came to longevity. They were unbeatable. For shifter, you can use any shifter in the Shimano 12-speed lineup from Derailleur all the way to XTR. And I do have a video giving you the details or the pros and cons on using one versus the other. And that brings me to the derailleurs. Can I use a 1x derailleur with these cassettes? What about a 2x derailleurs? I have the two SLX derailleurs here, the 1x7100 and the 2x7120. I do have a full video talking about the differences between these two. Make sure you check it out. But let's just say that the 2x derailleur works perfectly fine with the 1045 cassette, whether that's a 1x or a 2x drivetrain. The 1x derailleur, the M7100, has a slightly shorter cage, even though it's still called SGS, and this is recommended for the 10 to 51, so wide range cassette as a 1x. This also works fine with a 1045 cassette, only as a 1x drivetrain. Okay, so here it is. It works just fine. Surprise, surprise. But one thing that bothers me, especially on 27.5 wheels, see how close to the ground this is? Well, you have two options. Well, actually three. Number one, buy a whole bunch of these derailleurs, have them as spares. Yeah, I know, funny guy. Option two would be to go for the uber expensive XTR GS. XTR has this shorter cage version of their derailleur, the GS, and I bet that would be a perfect derailleur for this drivetrain. But again, that would be pretty expensive. Option number three would be to use an 11-speed GS derailleur like this one with my 12-speed drivetrain and 1045 cassette. Let me get that installed, and if it works, this would be actually awesome. Not only that the cage is shorter on this, but it works with a shorter chain as well. So I'm gonna do big to big plus 2 links, one inner, one outer. And here is installed, guys. So shorter chain, so less chain slap, also shorter cage and less bulky derailleur. I gained about 1.5 inches here from 4 inches. Now I am at 5.5 inches clearance from the ground. But how is the shifting? That's the most important part. I'm doing this with an Eagle chain, an older Eagle chain, because I didn't want to cut my expensive XT for this test. But let's give it a try. So what do you guys think? I believe the SRAM chain doesn't mesh that nicely with the cassette, but otherwise the derailleur can take that range, the pull ratio is the same, so I don't see any reasons not to use an 11-speed GS with a 1045 cassette. This is also amazing news for bikes that have a direct mount derailleur, like you see this Giant. It means that I can install a 12-speed Shimano on this bike just by using the 1045 cassette and the 11-speed GS derailleur. And if you look at the gear steps on this cassette, I would argue that is a lot better than one Shimano gave us with this 1146 cassette. None of the 12-speed Shimano derailleurs are compatible with the direct mount anymore, so this would be your only option. So what do you guys think about the 10 to 45 tooth cassette from Shimano? What do you think about this ability to use the 11-speed GS derailleur with it? I don't know about you, but I am pretty excited about this. But if you found this useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, keep an eye on social media, and until next time, I hope to see you folks on the trails. Cheers, guys. Cheers.